Hi there, hope you're well and thank you for taking a moment to watch this video. My name's Neil Pollard, I'm a lecturer, a teaching and learning mentor and a digital champion at Middlesborough College. Now the purpose of this video is to talk about and show support for an application that I've been using recently, an application called Interactive Tutor. It utilises ChatGPT but in its own unique way, and it makes it an excellent resource for creating lesson plans and teaching activities. But there's something that we don't always talk about, and this is the workload that staff have that is around things such as report writing or marking work and providing valid feedback for students. This is very time consuming and often results in a lot of stress for staff. So what I've done is I've spoken with Alex, the creator of Interactive Tutor, and he's provided a demonstration for us to show us how it can be used to mark work. And we've tested this with different samples of work and it works very, very well. So I thought the next thing to do is let's see what some of my colleagues think of this. So I took it to them and I gave them a demonstration. And what I've done now is I've interviewed all of them to get their thoughts and opinions on Interactive Tutor and how they see it, if it was something they would use in their daily life, and will it reduce their workload. So please take a moment to sit back, watch the video and see what my colleagues have to say. Thanks for your time now. Okay, hello Dan, thank you for taking a minute to do this with me. So first of all, did you get a chance to watch that video that I sent over? Have you had a look at it yet or not?
Yeah, I had a watch of it on YouTube. It was a good video, really informative, and it's nice to see the features.
Okay, so I just want to go I just want to overview a little bit about what it is we're going to talk about. So generally using ChatGPT, okay, you need to use various prompts, things like that, to get the right question and to get certain answers. Now, although many people use it this way, there is an application that makes it much easier than this, which you've obviously already seen, which is Interactive Tutor. All right. Now, I know that we've chatted about it in the past, so you know some of the main features being that it allows you to choose that specific data source, meaning that you can pretty much guarantee the information that comes back is going to be relevant. So with all that in mind, I've got a couple of questions I want to ask you. So if you wouldn't mind trying to answer these for me, I'd be grateful of some honest input.
Yeah,
so
no problem.
First of all, with an application like Interactive Tutor, as a teacher, what would you like to sort of achieve by using an application like this?
So straight away when I looked at this, I've obviously seen the resources that go on there linked to the subject, and it's straight away the first thing that jumps to me is creating questions for the students. So pick a topic, create me 10 questions on this subject, which it does straight away, relevant, and in a very similar format to what's already in the database from what I've given it. But if it's mathematical questions, it uses different numbers, but it's relevant, it's straightforward. Then it will provide me with the answers as well, which is fantastic.
What I was going to say, some of this quite new that I think we actually saw this the other day. What's your thoughts on the application's ability now to mark work?
Brilliant. It's just a time-saving genius, basically.
Yeah.
If you can, it's as basic as just copying the work in. It'll give you the feedback, the mark for the student. You just copy it over to their Teams page if you're using Teams. So it's what you do in 10 minutes is literally your full class work is marked for you. Whereas for me to do that physically, it's an hour at least to go through it, read it all, and comparing them to give them grades, which is what Interactive Tutor does. It gives them unique grades, unique feedback, which I sometimes struggle to do anyway. I'm thinking, was it similar to someone else's? Am I being too harsh? Whereas Interactive Tutor kind of does it for you in seconds.
Yeah, I agree. It's a bit difficult, isn't it? Because you'd have to set some sort of rubric or some sort of plan to sort of match each one against, so you can grade them more fairly. Whereas Interactive Tutor just does that. So, well, okay. You mentioned there about saving time, so I'm just going to give you 3 examples. And can you do me a favour? Can you place these in the order of how much time each you think would take? So the greatest amount of time first. Okay. So, yearly scheme of work creation, individual lesson planning, student reports, and marked work and feedback. So I'll just go them again. Yearly scheme of work, so your scheme of work for the year, individual lesson planning, writing student reports, and marked work. So can you put them in an order as to which would be?
Yeah, I think the marked work's top of the list straight away.
Right.
And then for me, individual lesson planning, make sure you've got enough resources there.
Right.
And then the scheme of work start of the year, and the report's probably the least. Although to be fair, the reports I do are quite generic,
Mhm.
which could do with tweaking, so they're a bit more personalised.
That's
But yeah, the lesson planning second on the list takes quite a bit of time in terms of creating extra resources for learners who are a bit further ahead. Make sure you've got enough to fill a time frame. But I've seen that you can quickly get around that.
what you said there, actually, there about learners who are a little bit further ahead. That is something that I'm going to be asking Alex, who we spoke to last week, because say lesson planning is great, but then being able to differentiate on ability and get extra resources planned, that in itself takes a lot of time to do. So hopefully we can do stuff like that with interactive tutor, which it's a massive differentiation and it's a lot of time saving, really.
It is needed because some of the differentiation stuff I do at the moment, for example, would be just some learners are getting multiple choice question papers. The high end learners, I'd take away the options, so they have to think what is the answer. They wouldn't have options in front of them,
Yeah.
and that's as far as I can really go in the time given. So
You,
something that can do it for me and save time.
I think it's you're right in that you're also restricted a little bit with your creativity as to how you're going to differentiate, and sometimes you can only differentiate maybe by small margins, sort of measurement sizes or things like that, because it's quite challenging to actually do.
Yeah.
Next thing I was going to say, so percentage wise, I mean, how much time do you think an application like interactive tutor would save you as a teacher?
In terms of admin time,
Yeah, let's go with admin time. Yeah, in terms of
it's
admin time,
admin time probably 70%.
yeah,
I
that's
think
it.
it's a high number, a very high number in terms of admin. A lot of my time spent marking the students' work, trying to give them meaningful feedback.
Yeah. With that in mind, do you think? Well, I think I know. I know the answer to what you're going to say, but do you think you have enough time to do all of the admin work within the sort of college hours?
No, absolutely not.
No,
Taking
absolutely not.
stuff home, eating to your time.
Yeah,
You can even spend time in the lessons thinking what I'm going to do in the next lesson
yeah,
and trying to mark work
yeah.
quickly while the students on task, but it's more rushed then it's not accurate and perfect because you're kind of rushing through it to
To get it
just to
done.
get it done.
Yeah, and you lose that quality, don't you? So,
Yeah,
okay. So I'm guessing I know the answer to the next one. So, if you had a chance to use this regularly, would you be using interactive tutor as a regular sort of as a day-to-day application?
absolutely be ideal. Any planning the lessons, even
Yeah,
such as being in a class and somebody's finished what I'm doing and I don't have anything extra, just quickly type in there,
yeah,
create me 10 questions on power or resistance or something relevant to that lesson, and it'll be done, and just copy and paste the text onto
yeah,
Teams. But you jump on that. Anyone else who's about finished, have a look at this as well.
yeah.
For those who haven't got around to it, you can do it as homework, and it'll be marked and graded and backed in.
It's-
So it would be day to day. It would be everyday usage.
I'm in agreement with you there. I think it's definitely classed as a game changer. Absolutely. So, right, well, that is it. That's all I need from you now. So listen, I appreciate you doing this and taking the time. And I will see you back at work on Monday, mate.
No
Okay.
problem. Have a lovely
Have a,
weekend. Thank you.
and you, mate. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye now.
I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of the application, which is Interactive Tutor. That's what it's called. Now, have you had chance to watch the video that I sent over? Did you get a chance to watch that?
I did, yeah. I watched it all the way through,
You,
yeah.
you did fine. Okay, then. So, right. So, how familiar are you with AI? Have you used it a little bit, or?
Only recently, I think it's since we've started, it's become a bit more apparent on the kind of the news recently, hasn't it? AI's got a bit
Yeah.
more sort of awareness about it, and obviously the CPD that we've had recently in the college as well.
Yeah. Right. So, with that in mind, I mean, I'm not massively experienced in it, but I've been having to play with it for the last sort of 6 months now. And what obviously people are using Chat GPT by means of they put lots of prompts in, and them prompts can then bring back a certain answer to a question, or create a certain worksheet, or create something. But it all what comes back is very much guided by what you put in, if that makes sense. Okay. Now, the reason I'm kind of championing this app is because it will allow you to take away that. I mean, what is really common is that when students go looking, or staff, to be fair, they use a source of information to create something, but that source of information comes from everywhere, comes from every corner of the world, everything on the internet, which as a result of that, you can end up getting actually erroneous information, sort of things that maybe aren't relevant in this country. And it's you've got to then, as a teacher or as a student, you've got to tailor your prompts to get the right information. Well, that to me is for most people quite a lot of work to do. Now, Interactive Tutor has a different approach to that. It uses ChatGPT. It uses the whole functionality of how it works. So the information that come back is well, the technology that makes it function makes it really, really useful, hence for creating amazing worksheets and stuff. But the main focus is because you can tell it where you want it to get information from. So you could say, take from a joinery course. It pretty much guarantees that the information that's coming back is relevant to what it is that you're wanting out of it, I suppose. So that's one of the features that makes it so impressive. Okay, so first question I've got really to ask you is, if you're going to be using an application like Interactive Tutor, as a teacher, what would you want it to do for you?
I think it's going to be kind of supportive in the probably planning a little bit of lessons for spontaneous kind of activities within the classroom, perhaps, if it can provide that support. Possibly definitely for feedback and marking, like was mentioned in the video. I think that would be a great application, because it's all laborious tasks that kind of take your time away from the actual sort of class participation, and preparing good lessons as well. 90% of all the hard work that we do is spent doing the tasks which haven't got the direct connection with the students, like marking and feedback. So probably more so for that type of thing, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you've kind of replicated a lot of what other people have said. And the first thing you said there was about the spontaneous work. That was actually one of your colleagues mentioned this, the ability to be able to differentiate on the fly. So if you're in a lesson and somebody finishes, to be able to produce something within seconds to give those more higher achievers, I suppose, something extra to work on. Okay, so let me just check. So I mean, you've briefly mentioned it there. How much of a game changer do you consider it is now that it can actually mark the work, grade it, and feedback? In relation to you, how important is that? Yeah,
it's like somebody else doing a job for you, isn't it? It's all when you would like somebody to be able to sort of take the lead on something like that and perhaps get involved, but they can't, because they'd have to do another job, like a physical act, where they're going to have to continue to read through the work and then provide the feedback and the marking. So it's going to completely sort of, I suppose, revolutionize the kind of that process. You're gonna take a big percentage of wasted time. It's not wasted, because marking and feedback, so it's a form of assessment. But if you can do the generic questions, the generic stuff, the stuff that we have to do, and it can provide that for them, it'll provide you the time. That is the biggest factor in our industry, is that we never ever get enough time to do the things that we really need to be doing. So it's going to change it massively if this becomes a prominent factor, and it's going to be something that it does come into industry on an accepted level, where everybody's using it continuously, and it's just an accepted platform for us to kind of be involved in on a daily basis, which always, with anything that you use, takes a period of time for that to happen. But if it does happen, and this platform does become kind of a generic thing for everybody to get involved with, it's going to be a complete game changer.
I think I agree with you. Definitely a huge game changer. It would be nice at some point if I can sit and show you how the guy who created it, he sat with me and a couple of other people, and he put together an essay marker. He did it in minutes, and it was up and running. And my key take from that is that I see different staff members. Some staff members are not as tech savvy, I suppose you could say, as what others are. And I know that if it's not a simple process, then it becomes a hindrance, really. And I think it's got to be so quick and effective. And personally, I've sat and tried this over the last couple of days to mark some work, marked about 30 pieces of work, and probably touched the keyboard about 3 times, because you just sort of a couple of copy and pastes. And when I sort of quality check it, so I have a look at some of the responses, I mean, it's yet to fail. And what's ever so impressive about it is that if you read the feedback and find something that maybe isn't quite what you like, or maybe you want to add an extra thing to it, it just takes minor adjustments. And it'll do it. You know, so it's really impressive. We'll get time to have a look at that, and I'm sure you'll. I think you'll find straight away that it'll make a big difference.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I'm gonna give you 4 tasks, and do me a favor. Can you order these for me from the one that takes the most time to the lowest time? All right.
Okay.
So I'm going to tell you what they are now. So, yearly scheme of works, individual lesson planning, student reports, and marking work and feedback.
Well, I suppose I'm gonna say, like, personally, like, schema works is that's a dynamic process that's ongoing. But if you had to do one from start to finish throughout the year for a fresh course, that would probably take the longest period of time to do. Lesson planning, we don't do a great deal of that at Middlesbrough College in terms of documented lesson planning, but we do lesson structures, and we have it like sort of a generic overview for that, I think. So there was lesson planning, schema works, mark work and feedback. And what was the other one?
And the other one was student reports.
Student reports.
So like progress, progress reports.
Progress reports. Yeah. Well, are you thinking about the whole year, or are you just thinking like as a task where you would just have to set it up? And
no, I'm thinking about, I mean, say progress reports obviously is a bit of an odd one, because we don't necessarily have to do them. They would normally
that's more of like an apprenticeship type kind of avenue.
Yeah, exactly. But that wouldn't necessarily say we wouldn't do them if there was a way that this could be done. Well, I suppose what I'm guessing, overall over the year, what is the biggest bind, out of all of those? Which one of those do you think, you know what, that is going to take a lot of my sort of global hours?
Well, I think it's going to be probably mark work and feedback, because that is something which is a dynamic process. You have to read, digest, understand, and provide credible feedback that's going to have benefit to the learner. And that is a tedious process, because if you've got to read one question, digest it, and feedback on that particular question, which could be quite in depth as well, just one question, you've got to do that 20 times, and there's 10 questions per learner. That, I think that's probably the biggest one. The other things, they're kind of a repetitive process. Once you've done them, they're there, and they're more simple to kind of have those structures in place. They're all kind of something that you do. You set up at the start of the year, but they're there for the year. The other one is a continuous process, and that is the sort of the most time consuming thing for me, is marking work and feeding back to it. It's something that you dread doing, because you know how much time it takes, and you don't get a lot from it at the end of it in terms of direct feedback from the students. It's like the cyclical structure, which is quite hard to kind of maintain.
I think you might find quite interesting, actually, that a response I got back from somebody else was that if we are, the amount of work we give students to complete is governed by the fact that we know we then have to mark it. So obviously we'll only give them so much. But one of the other responses was, if something like this can reduce your marking time by a quarter, probably even less than that, in turn means that we can probably give students more feedback overall, And
Yeah.
sort of like what you were saying there, we're using our time. Previously said we use our time more valuably, you know, and
Yeah.
more productively, really. So the students will actually benefit from this. You know, we'll benefit as well, but to an extent where we can be ultimately better teachers, you know,
Yeah.
doing it that way.
I suppose you can't always think on your feet either, can you? Like, in terms of, you might not always be given the most credible feedback that you can be given, because you miss things, you get tired by the end of the process, and you repeat yourself. So you tend not to, perhaps as a human being, have that sort of, you know, that quality sort of element to the very last degree. But I suppose if you're doing it on a platform like that, which is going to offer the same sustainable kind of feedback throughout the whole process, they're going to get more of a, you know, a quality response at the end of it, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think, let's say, it's something that I'm quite looking forward to going back and sitting down with a few people and watching, because it's one of these applications where you get an immediate impact. I don't have to really convince people. I can demo this and it will convince them itself within a matter of seconds, you know. So that's something that I'm looking forward to sitting down and helping sort of you guys in different sort of areas, you know, get this set up, ready to go. Okay. There was something you said there. I forgot. I'll come back to it. Something you said and I completely oh, that was it. With regards to the marking, when you're doing such a large volume, you do tend to repeat yourself. And then you find yourself in occasions, it's like you're copy and pasting the same thing over and over again. And that isn't really right, but
No.
it's understandable.
It's time restricted, isn't it? That's the big part of it, is because you know that you probably could put a little bit more kind of appropriate responses towards the individual students that you know need a little bit more guidance in a different area. But to do that might take you an extra sort of 5 minutes to kind of think about what you want to write, how you want to sort of structure it, and you don't give the appropriate response based on that. And then, but if you've got something feeding into that, it you know, isn't going to lose that sort of positive process, that'll take, you know, it'll be leaps and bounds in terms of watching the progression of the student, when, you know, they can see that they're not just getting a copy and paste feedback if they share with their friends or share with their peers in the classroom, you know.
Yeah, no, when you see the quality of the feedback that it produces, very bespoke. Each individual question is judged on its merits, and you can see the way it does it. It's not. I mean, you might get some similarities because the topic's the same. However, you do find that, you know, it does really think about how the student has worded the answer, and it reacts to that, which is, I mean, it's amazing. It really is. Okay, so I think we've kind of answered the next one. I was going to say, I mean, with an application like Interactive Tutor, if you were using it, how much time do you think it would save you?
Oh, I think it's going to be hard to quantify.
Yeah.
However, I do think it's going to be, if we had to say, you know, I think about 80% of the time it's going to be covering it. But it depends on how much you really want to kind of give the feedback. But because I value feedback and I value the marking process, and I'm doing other things at the moment which add to that, I can probably spend more time doing the other things I could do, like the video feedback I like to do, because I won't have to give the written part of it, because I do both the written part and that. If the written part's done, I can do the verbal part myself and give more credibility to it.
I think
So I think about 80%.
I think what you're saying there is really important. I think not everyone thinks about it, but it's really true that it's having that time, being given that time back, really, aren't you? And then what do you do with that time? And I think for the majority of us, we would throw that back into, you know, making it a better experience and more credible for the students, rather than just sitting and drinking tea for the rest of the day, which I'm sure would be lovely, but obviously we're not getting paid to drink tea. So if you're given an account, so if you were given an Interactive Tutor account and it does exactly what it says on the tin, so to speak, do you think this would be an application you'd use every day?
As soon as I've mastered it, yeah, without a doubt, yeah. As soon as because it's always trepidation and kind of apprehension whenever you come across a new sort of platform. But once those cobwebs have been sort of eradicated from that process, and you're familiar with it, you know, and everybody gets used to the idea that this is a new direction, I think it's going to be a necessary tool moving forward, to be honest. It's, you know, like computers were introduced to teaching and all the paper-based format was taken away, and, you know, everything on files, all of that's been eradicated through things like Teams and working online. I think this is the next step in ensuring that, you know, we're being as dynamic and you know, credible in what we do as, you know, as teachers.
Yeah, I think possibly one of the main reasons why I am trying to do this and gather this sort of information and sort of see this application developing is really because the reality, I like to go back to basics, so to speak. And what I've seen over the last so many weeks is lots of people showing us how ChatGPT in general does all different things. But if we really come down to it, the truth is we need to start talking about the things like the market that is taking so much time. It's great. You could sit all day long and create loads of resources for your lessons. That's fabulous. You've still got hours and hours of marked work to do. You've still got lots of laborious admin tasks. And I think that, like you say, if this becomes recognised as the go-to, listen, it will save you huge amounts of time. You know, I think it will be a massive game changer. It really will. And just sort of, in like this, your own individual team at college, they're all game. They're absolutely fabulous. Everyone's up for this. So I think for you guys going back, I think between all of you, if you can master this and you have an account set up, I think you're gonna, you know, you guys can all set off on the right track.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people that maybe either afraid of it or maybe think it's too much hassle. And, you know, rest assured, I can guarantee this is one of the easiest applications once it's set up and running to use, you know. So, but again, when we get back to work next week, I'm happy. We'll have a cup of tea, sit down with you and some of your team, mate, and we'll have a little look at it. Right. So where are we at? So Jim, thank you again for doing this. I'm going to ask you a few questions. I know that you've already looked at the video that I sent with Interactive Tutor. So I just want to explain a little bit about what makes Interactive Tutor special. Then I've got 4 or 5 questions to ask you, and it won't take much of your time at all. Okay. So obviously, using ChatGPT itself, you need to create various prompts to ask the right question to get certain answers. And I know a lot of people use it and do it that way, and that's fine. But obviously with Interactive Tutor, it uses ChatGPT, but it's sort of by giving you the opportunity to make your own individual tutors. You don't necessarily have to keep using the prompts. You know, the prompts are there once they're set, they're there. And obviously that's being able to sort of, you decide what data source you're going to use means that the information that comes back is always going to be relevant in relation to whatever it is that you're actually asking it to do. Now, first of all, my first question to you is, as a teacher, what would you like to achieve from using an application like Interactive Tutor?
Okay, so I can envisage using it to set student tasks, research tasks and challenges. And I think that the fact that they've got access to ChatGPT that already is much more sort of interactive than Google is, but also by limiting the source that ChatGPT uses is going to prevent a lot of errors that the students make just by sort of going for the first hit on Google or going straight to Wikipedia and copying and pasting. I think it's going to be very specific to the course material, but it's also sort of able for them to use it in such a way as if they get an answer from the interactive tutor and they're reading through it and they don't understand part of it, they can say, hey, expand on this, sort of talk me through these steps, or what do you mean by this part? So that when they're putting together research tasks, it's much more than just spitting out of what Google is, and to be honest, even better than just reading through the workbooks and going, oh yeah, I can see that paragraph and trying to understand it, sort of old school.
I think it's more refined, isn't it? So like you said, they can find something. I think you said this in the past, and then you can go and ask again, but you know that it's digging into the information that's relevant, that's right, and it's not just randomly pulling things off the internet and hoping that it's, you know, it's correct, when in a lot of cases it isn't.
Yeah.
One question, what I was going to ask you though is, one other thing is, and we talked about this yesterday. What's your thoughts on the ability for interactive tutor to now mark work and feedback?
Oh, so we've had a demonstration on this a while ago, and that was all sort of set up during the time we're having that meeting, and it was incredible to see, because basically what we're doing at the moment is we're sort of following the City and Guilds guidelines, and there's maybe like 3 or 4 questions for a learning outcome, and then we've got to collect them all back in from a group of 20 students, individually mark them, identify where they've gone wrong, grade them, provide feedback, and we saw it happening in real time. But we were able to give it a completed document. It was able to see where there'd been no mark, no answer given for one of the questions, and then for the others, it was able to say, right, so you've answered this and that's 100% correct. You've answered this and you've got it partly right, but you've missed out something. And the way that it was able to deliver that feedback and be very sort of nuanced and award it a grade, I can see that saving so much more time. And it's actually going to be beneficial, because, you know, when we're marking work, as much time and effort as we can put into it, it's still just tick or cross or, you know, nearly right, try again, do a bit of research. But we were watching it saying, you've got this part of it right, this bit's not quite right, and then we can sort of get to refer back to areas from its own study program, to say, go back and have a look at this to improve your mark, kind of thing. So the ability to give, sorry, I've got a dog in the background.
I know.
The ability to give much more productive feedback. So it's individual, it's personalized, but it's also not just, yeah, you could have done a bit better, or, you know, you've done it perfectly. It's actually gone into it and said, these are the areas where you've lacked and you can improve on. And I've talked about it as well.
Well, I was just going to say that. Go on, you finish off. Sorry, I was interrupting there. I was just going to say, I don't think people realise how much effort's required to do that bespoke feedback.
To be honest, it gets to the point where it gets on top of you. If I'm expected to do at least like 1 worksheet per class, and I've got 3 groups of students that I see 6 times a week, the maths just, you know, the amount of work that you generate for yourself just gets incredible, and you end up being, right, okay, I know the answers to these questions, and just tick through all the right ones, cross through all the wrong ones, and say, yeah, 3 out of 4 right, try harder. And your feedback is meant to be so much more than that. Yeah, it's meant to be where the students go, oh yeah, I can see that, and yeah, I do need to improve on that. And with the best will in the world, you don't have the time to do that, unless you're willing to stay back for hours on end on a night time to mark work,
which a lot of people do. And that time could be used for, I mean, obviously for your own family, or I spoke to somebody earlier who said that they'd be happy to cut the time down they spent marking, because then they could utilize that time to spend more time teaching or to do whatever. But generally making the time spent in college very, very productive and time well spent, I suppose. So what I'd like you to do, Jim.
Just one more point on that one as well is what I'll just go back to is we've even sort of had discussions about what is the point in me producing work for a student to do, and they're always sort of achieving 50% or 40%, and then the next week giving in the worksheet that's at the same level, when I know that the ability is there to say, right, for the lads, the students that get 100%, differentiate more. So the next time they get a worksheet, they get the challenging questions, and for the ones that struggled last time, ChatGPT, when it's helping us to produce questions, can make them simpler, or they can clarify what they know that individual student has got wrong previously. And that's something that if that was a human to do that, it would be, you know, it would be an immense amount of time required to do that.
I spoke about this earlier, and where you're saying we need to differentiate the work for the more advanced students and those who are struggling. And it's surprising how hard it is to come up with tasks a little bit more challenging, followed by a little bit further challenging. It's quite an ongoing procedure, isn't it? You know, and if interactive tutor can do that, I mean, if it could create the same, if it could create an activity sheet, would then create the same one again 3 or 4 times, with it increasing in difficulty each time, you're going to have an abundance of work and resources for your students during that session. So, I mean, that's a good point. Actually, you're not the first person to make that one. Jim, I've got a couple of I've got 4 things I'm going to ask you. I'm going to tell you these 4 activities, and can you put them in order of what you consider from the most time it takes down to the least time it takes? Okay, so yearly scheme of work, individual lesson planning, student reports, and marked work and feedback. Can you put them in order of which takes the longest time, please?
Yeah, so I would say definitely it's going to be marked work and feedback is the biggest time sink. And then I don't really get involved in student reports, but I know that the sort of administrative side of our staff do, and I know that that's sort of it's dragging data from various different sources and putting it together. And I know that does take, you know, a fair bit of time. For me, yearly lesson plans, we really get for the most part, our data from the awarding body, and then tweak them just to make sure that they fit in line with our college's policies.
And the last one was lesson plans.
Yeah, that tends to be, that tends to just be, you know, relatively quite simple to do and to maybe only do once. And the last one was individual lesson plans.
That's the individual lesson plans. And where do you rate that one? So let's rank these then. Let's make sure you've got your marked work at the top. Then did you say, do you think student reports?
I think for the people that do it, that's got to be a big, hard amount of work to be done.
Yeah.
Then the lesson plans. Yeah.
Yeah.
I find that I'm always tweaking the lessons because I know the students, I know what works with them from group to group, and I even know what works for them week to week. So when I'm teaching one group, I'll change it to the other, exactly the same level of group, different students. I'll change how I deliver it, and then, you know, if we're coming up towards half term, or we're just coming back from half term, or even whether the lesson falls on a Monday or a Friday, I'll tweak it. Right. And I never record that. It's just something I've learned about through experience. But if it was, and I make notes in my diary, this worked this time, this right. One didn't, change it around. So if I could get some form of assistance with lesson plans, you know, even if it's just a case of getting a set of lesson plans and then being able to say, this won't work because of X or Y, and then saying, rewrite them or make these changes.
I think you'd be able to feed in your lesson plan. So if it was to create a lesson plan, you'd be able to give it the same lesson plan back and ask it to modify it to suit, which to be fair, I mean, that's a really good way of sort of reflecting on your lessons. I reckon there'll be a lot of people that don't do that. But by doing that, you also mean that it also means you can differentiate between lessons activities with not a lot of drama, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
So Jim, the last
for me, if I'm delivering lessons, I fall back on my experience. I know what will work. I've got a lesson plan in front of me and I use it as a bit of a guide. But if there's ever a time where I'm missing and we need somebody else to cover a lesson, if those lesson plans had more context and detail and you know, saying things like, don't give this group a written task to do because of these problems, or make sure that whatever you do, whatever you're saying is written down on a board as well as being on the PowerPoint. That's valuable information that I keep in my own brain that could very easily be put out for the next teacher that's going to come along and teach them, so they don't have to figure it out themselves.
I don't think many people consider that, to be fair. I mean, when
No,
you're off
yeah,
if you're off sick or you're on away for a holiday or whatever, and that person covering, you generally people just point and go, "You're doing that topic." But to be able to have like I suppose like a teaching a group profile for the actual lesson structure itself, that would be very handy. I mean, that would be that's next level stuff. That really is. But I mean, I don't even see that as a major challenge. I mean, for the things, it's all just comes down to differentiation dependent on certain factors. And as long as you can feed them factors into an AI assistant like Interactive Tutor, then I can't see it being that much of an issue to develop those, really. So, right, I'm just gonna have a quick look on here. So, Jim, percentage wise, I mean, I don't know whether percentage wise is the best way. How much time do you think you could save if you were using Interactive Tutor on a daily basis?
I reckon I must generate at least an hour and a half's worth of marking a day. You know, and if I had that time freed up and were able to do other things like prepare for lessons better, get some, because I'm always thinking I could be demonstrating this. I could have like little demonstrations, get them up, but I never actually have the time to do that. And I think, you know, spending that time that I could be marking, preparing for lessons would make my lessons much more the way I want to teach, really.
The way they want, you're kind of sidetracked, aren't you? Because you just know you've got that volume. And I think that if I had to put, I mean, I think that if you say there you get how much you said roughly, you might have about an hour's worth of marking, something like that. I mean, so you're going to generate that over the whole week. Now I reckon that an hour's worth of marking, so you're talking 5 hours worth by the end of the week, but using something like Interactive Tutor, that's going to drop that down. I mean, I've already tried marking work, sitting and going through some real work, real time, and I think you're talking, it drops it down to less than quarter of the time. You're talking 15 minutes, you know, no bother whatsoever, because you just copy and paste and work in there, and because you've already created that tutor to meet the needs of what you require, it does it. And I mean, even with a bit of quality checking, I've read through and the responses are outstanding.
I mean, so, I've even done it in the past where I've used Microsoft Forms, and I've taken all of my sort of Word documents and I've fed it in, and I've said, you know, it's a dumb version of smart marking where I say, these are the answers that you're looking for, these are the key points that you're looking for. And students have to use Teams, assignments, Microsoft Forms, and it's not the right way of doing it. And it does get to a point where it kind of marks itself, but it's so looking for exactly that right answer that if they've got a decimal place wrong, it doesn't award it. So there's no smartness about it, really. So you still end up having to go back in and saying, right, well, you've marked that as wrong, but I can see it's right. So you're still having to sort of go in and change it. But equally, the time it took me to set up all of those Microsoft Forms, just for the students to say, yeah, it's not worth it. We're not going to bother doing this. Can't you just give us a paper copy? Because they got to that, and every time they submitted work, and it was 20 questions long, and it was automatically marking as like 2 or 3 correct. What's the point of me doing it next time? So there was an awful lot of time wasted by me, and then students were really disheartened by using that.
I think I mean, I know exactly what you've done there, and I think you've in a very Tony Stark way, you were limited by the technology you had at that time. And now obviously we've got this, which is a world of difference. And it's like you say, and for students and for staff, that when a particular activity becomes more hassle to do it in a certain way, people just don't bother doing it. So
and then on the back of that, to get the information off forms to then be put into a spreadsheet, it's, you know, if I want to give the students keep a record of how well the students did, I've got to download it as a CSV file, get it into Excel, and spend half an hour just to say, all right, that's how well the students did. And it's it's ridiculous, really.
It's
not worth the trouble.
It's not worth the trouble. Exactly. I think that's why that's what I've looked for in interactive tutor. That can it be genuinely 100%, worth doing? So let's say I sit with a cup of tea and I think I'm going to mark 20 pieces of work and I'm going to see how quick I can do it. And when you look at it and I think, you know what, not just the speed that I've done it, but the actual amount of quality sort of feedback, bespoke feedback coming through, it just makes it worthwhile. It really, really does. The last question I've got, Jim, is, oh, your picture's disappeared there. Are you still there, matey?
I'm there. Can you see us?
Yeah, I can see you now. You disappeared for a second, but you're all good.
Yeah, I think I must have gone on to power battery saving mode, maybe.
Ah, right. No, you came straight back though. Okay, last question. If interactive tutor was made available to you to use all the time as a tutor, is it something you would use as a day-to-day resource?
Yes, yeah, I can see me using it. Definitely. Yeah, just seeing what you've been able to do with it and the videos that you've sort of produced and the conversations we've had.
Yeah.
Yeah, it will definitely be a daily thing. Yeah.
To ChatGPT and interactive tutors. So obviously using ChatGPT itself requires the use of various prompts, asking the right question to get certain answers. And many people use it that way, and that's totally fine. However, there is an easier way to do it, and that, of course, is using an app like Interactive Tutor. Okay, one of the main features is that it can choose specific data. You can choose a specific data source, and that pretty much guarantees that information is going to be relevant in relation to whatever it is that you're asking it to do. Okay, so first question I really have for you is, what would you like to achieve as a teacher, as a team leader? What would you like to achieve from using an app like Interactive Tutor?
I think it's a couple of things really. I think like ultimately it's to like maximize the experience for the students, but also if you can also reduce teacher workload as a part of that too, then that's a bonus as well. But ultimately, yeah, just to increase the experience for the students.
Okay. What I was going to say is, what's your thoughts now on your own opinion? Because obviously a certain part of this has stood out for me. What's your own thoughts on the application's ability to actually mark and feedback work now then?
Yeah, I think that's really good. Like I was saying before, it'd be good to build into teaching. So although it might not reduce the workload, I could increase the intervals at which give meaningful feedback.
Right.
So
okay.
So I could use like written feedback. I could do it myself, but then I could also use the interactive tutor to sort of give sort of checks along the way, and sort of build that experience, build some extra feedback in.
I was going to say, so I'm right in thinking that, which is quite an interesting way you're putting that then. So as much as we're thinking that it'll reduce workload, you're actually thinking, well, in fact, we can use it to give more regular feedback, because now if we reduce the time by half, it means we can ultimately give twice as much feedback. That's, you know what, you're the first person to say that. And when you look at it like that, it's actually, that's proper teaching, real teaching stuff there, mate. So awesome. Okay, so what I need you to do for me, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to name 4 activities, and I'd like you to place them in order of which you think is the most time consuming. Okay,
right. Okay.
So here we go. So yearly scheme of work or yearly scheme plans creation, individual lesson plans, student reports, and marked work and feedback.
Most time consuming, I'd probably go schemes of work.
Okay.
Then marked work and feedback.
Okay.
Then lesson plans.
And then student reports, I guess.
Then student reports, probably.
Yeah. I think maybe the student reports aspect of it is something that it's quite new, and we don't necessarily do as much of that at the moment. But
no,
we may. I mean, I think that when we think about what you've just said there about where we could use this interactive tutor to reduce our workload, but we could also say, well, hang on, let's use it to our advantage. Let's create more regular reports for parents, because it doesn't take a quarter of the time to do anymore. So let's just do that on a regular occasion. Do you know what? I really like your way of thinking to that, because when you put it that way, you do give a way better experience for the student and the student
absolutely.
guardians. You know?
I mean, yeah, and that itself would reduce workload, and then you've also got the aspect with that reduced workload, you can implementing that alongside it. The students are getting more, and the teachers having to do less of that work, and just building that in. So some aspects are AI, obviously some of it's written by the tutor, but that balance of both, I think, could be really good for workload and student experience. Yeah, absolutely.
No, I think you're right there. So, okay. So next question then. So how much time, I mean, it's a bit of a difficult one, this one, but how much time do you think that using an application like Interactive Tutor could save you? And I know that I appreciate that's hard because you probably don't judge how much time you spend on doing things, but would you have a go, try and see if you could give us a percentage on how much time this application might save you?
I mean, a lot of my time spent prepping lessons and marking, etc. I'd say if you used Interactive Tutor to its full capabilities, using every different sort of scenario, could probably save half of the time that I spend doing those sort of tasks easily. It's
a large amount of work and hours that we spend doing admin and all these planning sort of tasks. So yeah, it would be spot on. So with all that in mind, simple question really now is, so if this application is made available to you, is this something that you could see? I mean, assuming that all of these potential tasks can happen, can work, is it something that you would consider a go-to application that you'd use every day?
Oh yeah, it seems brilliant. It seems absolutely brilliant. For me, the AI bots and feeding it your own data, sort of ring fencing that, and then that stops any sort of misconceptions. I know we'd spoke about before about different standards and things. So we in Weldon use British standards and American standards.
Right.
If students are going to the internet, there can quite easily be a misconception and use the wrong type of standard. Whereas if we're putting our own data into this and ring fencing that, then they're only getting the information that is approved by yourself, the tutor. So I think that's absolutely superb. And then the other sort of aspects of the marked work and everything too. I think yeah, absolutely, I'll be using it.
I think I'd like to think that over the next sort of few weeks, a lot of us can get together as teachers and probably get together with the developers of the app, because I know Alex is really easy to work with. He's great for this sort of stuff, to allow some fine tuning, so we can all go in and say, listen, we've used it for this, but maybe this works or this doesn't. Can you help us? Because I've watched him. A couple of me and a couple of the other guys watched him as he sort of put one together, and he's I mean, obviously he designed it. He's so familiar with it, and so things that might take us a little bit of time to work out, he tends to find straight away. So, and I'm pretty sure that he would be happy to sit in and help us to sort of tweak and make these, the perfect AI tutors, to be fair. So, Danny, that is it. That's all I needed to get from you, to be fair. And I do appreciate your time on that one.
No, you're welcome.
We will no doubt catch up again. But I will see you after the weekend. I will see you back in at work, and I'll get the cups. Thank you again for taking a minute to join this meeting and help us so we can discuss this application. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you a bit of an overview, okay? A little bit of an introduction, and then I'm going to ask you a couple of specific questions and see where we go from there. Now, I sent you a video over a couple of days ago. You did have a chance to look at that, didn't you? You did have a look at that. Okay, so for you, Martin, I know that you are we talk about this all the time, but you're I should have said a learner when it comes to IT and digital tech. But so what I want to highlight for you is, first of all, ChatGPT, and the way people generally use it is by you give ChatGPT prompts and direct it in a certain direction, and what you give it usually has an impact on what is returned, what information comes back. Okay, now the application that we're talking about, the one that I'm hoping for you to start using, which is Interactive Tutor, uses the same process, but the only difference really is that it allows you to, you can determine where that source of information is taken from, so you can be very specific to a course or to a certain area, knowing that the information is going to be accurate. And on top of that, it allows you can create your little tutor, and you don't have to keep going back putting the prompts in. It's already set up for you. So for example, if you wanted to have an essay grader, once you've set it up, you can then just keep going back to it with minimal effort. And I think that to me is a big selling point. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through a couple of questions. First question really is, as a teacher, as an educator, if you were given access to an application like this interactive tutor, what would you like it to do for you?
Well, first of all, I could tap into the subject matter in City and Guilds, carpentry and joinery. So it would be that sort of thing that I'd be looking for, whether it be at T level or 1, 2, and 3 grade. It would be wonderful to be able to tap into that and get some more specific information around it. Secondly, it would be great to be able to set programs, teaching, lesson plans and schemes of work based around that. And that includes subjects, as off the top of my head, health and safety, building construction, and different products within the building industry. It would be good if we could have something where we can set quizzes pertaining to our particular topics.
So, I mean, that is, and I know definitely the interactive tutor does that. It can solve all those issues, which kind of brings me on to my next question, which is, we know it can create activities. We know it can help develop lesson plans. I'm yet to see it create a scheme of work, but I'd like to see that. But the one thing we have seen is that it's got the ability to mark work and provide feedback. So what's your thoughts about being able to use it to mark your work?
Well, I'm sure it would help our workload, but also I would like to be able to put into it some of the feedback that the students give and check to make sure that that is the correct information and that they're on the right target area, on the right subject matter. And looking at how we could bring in different forms of assessment, formative, I've just lost the blinking word out here.
Summative.
That's it, summative. All of those elements that we are required to follow, and having the holistic approach as well on what the student is offering us as their feedback on the questions that we put to them. Have they looked broadly enough at the question, and can we give them further feedback that incorporates all of those various assessment approaches?
Right. So what you're saying there, and I've discussed this with a couple of your colleagues as well, that so when interactive tutor marks work, it marks every question independently, so on its own merits, and it looks at how that actual question is being answered and feeds back based on that learner's response. Now, what we can do with it, and I think this is not actually that complicated, is to modify how that tutor responds to certain feedback, if you will.
Yeah.
So what I did, I mean, we saw it set up very, very quickly to mark some work, and I've tweaked it 2 or 3 times to make it even better. And I think that once you and some of the guys in your team set an essay grader up, doing exactly what you're saying, so getting it to look, and so for example, you might want it to answer a certain question, but then you might want the essay grader to respond based on certain things. So you might, depending on what the student says, you might think, okay, please respond in this way, and give the student feedback based on a certain thing as opposed to based on another thing, because it all comes down to how that student responds to a particular question, and it could vary. So 2 students they could both give quite correct answers, but they could be from 2 very different viewpoints. And it's
very much so. I look at it from the holistic side of things. You may have 2 students giving 2 different thought patterns on a particular subject, but then it may assist the student to understand why they're thinking in that way. What's impacting on their life, what environmental issues they're being faced with. It's about them understanding the broader aspect of why they're involved in this particular course, or why they want to be in that industry.
That is something 100% I know that interactive will do. So interactive tutor, if you're looking at the holistic view, you can set it. I do something similar, so that I ask it to mark the work, feedback, then I ask it to respond. And it could be that you decide that if it was a health and safety thing, you might want to then ask it to give that student a scenario based on their questions. So once they've completed 4 or 5 questions, they're then given a scenario that then they may have to feed back on as well. So I know the potential for if that is, we're already at that stage, and I think that's just a matter of us sitting down and showing you how to do it now, really. So I mean, it's quite exciting to be able to see that, and I think that because you and I are in the same boat, we're both teachers. I know for a fact that it works, and my over these last sort of few days, my marked work's pretty much done, because it speeds the process up. So I'm looking forward to sitting down and showing you how to do that. Now, the other thing I wanted to ask you, man, I'm going to give you four teacher activities, and I'd like you to put them in order of which you think takes the most time. Okay, so, and the thing you can think about this on as maybe as a yearly thing. So over the year, how much do these, how much of your time do these take? So the first one is scheme of work. The second, that's a yearly scheme of work. The next one is individual lesson plans. Then it's student reports, and then it's marked work and feedback.
I would put the scheme of work first, then the student reports, because they're ongoing. They're not just. Although this year we got it badly wrong in our section, it was a sort of a crash at the end of it because we were all new, we didn't know what we were doing. But if there was something there, such as a model of the City and Guilds booklet, and again I've got it out still, whereby we can have a continuous process of adding to the computer rather than it being paperwork, that would be beneficial. Lesson plans, of course, and the fourth one, of course, was
marked work.
Marked work. Again, they're all pressure, but I think the scheme of work is probably the biggest one in setting it up. For me personally, it might be different for others, but for me personally, it would be putting that scheme of work for the year out in front of us. I know that Ian has said, well, do 12 weeks or do 6 weeks, and it'll develop therefrom. To me, it's about having that plan in place for the year so that everybody's singing from the same hymn sheet.
It's an interesting viewpoint, that, because when I spoke with Ian, he is of the mindset that the scheme of work's quite a fluid document, it's strange because I agree with what you're saying and I also agree with what he's saying. But let's just bring it down to basics. If you were in a position where we could set an AI tutor like Interactive Tutor up to create it in a matter of moments, then you could pretty much, if you choose to do it your way, it can be done. And like Ian, if Ian chooses to do it for maybe 12 weeks, he could do it that way as well.
How I look at this is, if you're planning on building, let's say, Tees Works on the riverside there, they're planning on building huge factories. They don't just do it every 6 weeks. They do it for the whole program. And they have it set out in Gantt charts or whatever they use. That program is going to start on this particular date. We're going to bring this person in and this trades in and so on and so forth, so that the whole project's in place and they know what they're working to. The same applies to us.
I think if you've got your 12 months in place, everybody knows what the direction is. Then over that course of the year, I suppose there is going to be modifications. There might be adjustments made. Absolutely. But at least that plan's there in place.
What struck me, and I'm pointing this way because I'm looking along all the benches to the maths department, Adam and what's her name? Natalie. They were sat at the end of the term last year before we broke up for summer, and they were head down and so forth. And Natalie turned and said, "That's it. That's my scheme of work done for the year." And I just thought how wonderful that must feel. She's tweaked it, but how wonderful that must have felt to be able to walk away for the summer break knowing that I'm ready for September. That's where I would love to be in preparation for next year.
I think I think we're going to see some big changes with applications like Interactive Tutor being able to do all of these activities that we're wanting to do. And I think one thing that I've noticed is that, and I think this is really important, is that what most of the people I spoke to have said is that the result of saving a lot of time, no one's yet to say we can then sit around and drink tea. They've all said that we can now develop or we can interact with students more, we can give more feedback.
Absolutely. The point of all of that is it's like having a PA, your personal assistant. It's like having a PA. I was in a fortunate position in my previous job. I had 2, and I was able to say to them, could you do this? Could you? And it was done. So that give me opportunities to go and talk to staff, people on the shop floor, and so on and so forth. That's for me what it would be like. It'd be having a PA who would release me to be on the shop floor more, being around, talking to people, being able to interact with students, doing my one-to-ones without pressure.
Yeah.
Doing more training, personal development without pressure, knowing that that part of the job is sat there.
You know that, I mean, I've seen this, but I've not tested it myself yet. But what Interactive Tutor can do, which I find interesting, that if everybody was to feed information into an Excel document based on, say, student performance, student attitude, you could then so for example, maybe if it was every 3 months, you could ask the tutor to create a report based on that data. And it would actually come back. So, for example, it could create a report after the first 3 months explaining that a student's doing very well, and it can highlight trends.
Yeah, well, and that to me then feeds Pro Monitor, because they're looking for us to give positives on Pro Monitor, exactly. and all that sort of stuff. So you could take that, and if it's a document, you can cut and paste and stick it on Pro Monitor, and that gives the student a buzz.
I think with that, I mean, if you've got to remember, you are a personal tutor, aren't you?
Yeah.
So you've got to set smart targets. Now, it's a lot better to set an informed smart target based on a report that's being produced than to just sit there and think of one on the spot, because it's not really relevant to sit there and a student tells you something. Maybe we all know that the smart target should be based on factual information.
What that does, it takes me back to social working, that we don't write smart targets for clients based on my thinking. We do it as a collective. Yep. And then you would do the same for students. You, as a collective, as a team, you'd be constantly updating information, which then could go towards their smart target. Absolutely superb.
I think, Martin, that I'm going to take that. I mean, the Alex who developed the application, he'll see this anyway, but I'm going to go back to him and say, let's have a little look at that, how we could create a document that could be continuously fed in so that it could continuously give us a review, something that we can use.
Nursing practice, the nurses put onto their computers constant information and reports around the patient that they're dealing with, so that when the consultant comes in, he just has to look at those notes. Yeah. He's not basing on the word of mouth. He's basing on factual information provided by the practitioner. Now, that's what we, as a group, need to be doing. I'm sorry if I'm creating more work.
No, I think what you're highlighting is that there is a lot of things as teachers we should be doing, but we don't do. And it's not that we don't want to do them, it's because we have so much time in a lot of other areas that, let's be honest, if AI can and will resolve these issues, we can then start maybe doing the job that we kind of want to really do. To do, exactly.
I want to be on the shop floor butchering wood.
Yeah, I think all of the people I've spoke to have all butchered in. Sorry, I just realised what you said. I think all of the people talking, they're all going down that same sort of field. They all want to be better at what they do, but they're held back by the extra admin. So, if initially I started this as a percentage, but it was difficult to quantify. If you were using an application like Interactive Tutor, how much time, based on what we've discussed, how much time do you think it would save you in a day?
Well, me, loads.
Loads.
I wouldn't be sat at my computer at 7 o'clock in the morning thinking, how do I switch this bugger on?
Yeah, I suppose in a sense then, for people that maybe not as quick at IT as others, it's going to be even more valuable, because
absolutely.
It's good, and that's I keep you in mind all the time, because I think, well, I used to do this with Howard, but unfortunately you've taken that sort of throne now. So what I tend to do is think, right, can Martin do this, and will it be easy to do? And if the answer is yes, then it works. It works.
Good lad.
So the last question, Martin, is, if you do get the opportunity to use Interactive Tutor on a regular basis, is it something that you think you'd use all the time?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Do you know what, Martin?
It would be my personal PA.
It would be your assistant, yeah. I mean, you could set its responses to say hello to you. Hi, Martin. How can I help you? Every time.
Have a good day.
Do you know what? I'm excited about the potential that's coming with it. I only generally champion applications that really, really stand out. Sure. But I am you know, I'm excited that I'm going to be able to sit with people like you and Ian and all the other people who've helped with this, to be able to show them, so that you can actually come back and go, you know what, everything that we worked at, everything we talked about, it's all come to fruition, and it works, you know. So okay,
I just thank you for the Trello. Is it Trello? It's just made those Thrive sessions much easier, because like 2 or 3 weeks ago, we looked at the DVLA theory test, because the lads wanted to pass their theory test, so we did that. But there have been other weeks when I've thought, oh, God, what? And I've just dropped onto something. But me being me, have built on it beyond the slides that you've put up there, because they're just memory joggers. They're aid memoirs for me. To come out with life's experiences, you know. And last week I had them stood up presenting in the classroom themselves on their weekend. But the fact that your Trello's there, I know I can just drop onto one of the tiles and have a subject.
I think it will always, for me personally, with all these applications, it comes down to making our life that bit more enjoyable, and taking away that stress, you know. And say, when I do come across applications of like Trello and like Interactive Tutor that I know can work, you know, I do want to shout about it, and it's just good that you guys are so receptive to it, and I promise you're going to see the benefits. You really are. So Martin, thank you again for jumping on. I appreciate that. So you can now go have your lunch with your wife, and I will see you again on Monday. Okay.
She did make some comment about me saying that Joe's the only thing that never stopped working.
Yeah, I think that won't be the first comment she's going to make. So best of luck with that one. If you're not back at work for another week or so, I've got a pretty good idea why. Okay.
I'm sucking food through a straw.
Yeah. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you a bit of an introduction about the application, and then we've got a few questions to go over. And if you could just give me some honest feedback, that'd be awesome. So I know you did have a chance to watch that video that I sent. Have you watched that? You have, haven't you? It was the one with the marked work. Have you watched it? So you've seen that. I know you've seen that.
Yeah.
So obviously, when I've chatted with you, you're not as familiar technology-wise, okay? No. Which you've said that, and that's something that we just work on, and I'm sure I can help you with that when we get back into work. But what I want to say is, first of all, using ChatGPT requires the use of prompts, and you know, you've got to sort of target. You've got to sort of put prompts in place to target the right questions to get the right answers back. Now, using this application that we've been talking about, Interactive Tutor, that saves you that hassle. You can use the prompts, but they stay set in the tutor, so you can always go back. So if you want a tutor to behave in a certain way, you can set it up. So every time you go back to it, it's ready to go straight away. An example being, if you wanted someone to mark a course, then you could go back and it all would be ready to mark your course, okay, or mark your work. Now, what I think is key with this application really is that it allows you to choose the source of the data that you're referring to. So yes, you can use the internet in entirety, but if you're teaching a specific course, then it's fair enough. You can actually just say, listen, only take your information from this document or this website. I think that's one of the key things for me that sold it. But what I'd like to ask you, first question really is, as a teacher, as an educator as such, if given access to an application like Interactive Tutor that can do things for you, what sort of things would you like it to do?
Just anything what will like speed process up. So we've got what saves us time. Just anything related to like say marking work, creating lesson plans, just scheme of works, things like that.
So generally, an increase using it as a tool to sort of save us a lot of time on pretty much everything we do as teachers, really. Okay. Yeah. Okay then, so what's your thoughts? I know you've seen this. What's your thoughts on the ability to just be able to give Interactive Tutor some work and it will mark it and feedback for you straight away?
Yeah, really good. As long as I remember, like on the previous video, the things that were passing through my mind was like just knowing you have to be aware of like your students as well. You know, like on like the group profile, if they've got any like different disabilities, like dyslexic, autistic, something like that.
Yeah.
Does it like take that into consideration, that if you write that in and stuff like that?
Do you know what? I think when it comes down to the fine tuning, so you can create your tutor and you can fine tune it to behave in a certain way depending on what that is. Now, obviously, people with dyslexia, it may pull out as a spelling mistake. But does it have the ability to identify if something is a dyslexia issue or not? That I'm not sure about, but I wouldn't write that off either, because that is obviously very commonplace. So I would think there would be, or if there isn't at this point, I'm sure something will be developed in a way to try and help with those things. That's actually, you're the first person to mention that, but yeah, so feedback that takes into consideration any student sort of learning, learning sort of concerns.
If it's like a specific student's work, and like from reading the profile that there's some sort of extra support needed or something like that, maybe like, would that work? Like, it could be open to improve, like bits added on and stuff, wouldn't it?
I think it definitely could. I really do. When we get a chance to sit down and have a look, and I'll show you how I've done mine, when I get my grader to mark, every now and then, if something crops up that I didn't think, oh, hang on, I didn't realise it would do that, you can just fine tune it to tweak it. But obviously, identifying sort of ALS, sort of learning support issues, that's definitely something that's going to be. I think you might be the first to come up with it, but I think someone else will come up with it at some point.
But
definitely.
But like, it really impressed though. Like, love the way it does it. With the example you showed us yesterday. Yeah,
saves a lot of time. So, what I was going to say is, obviously you're impressed with it, marking work. I've got 4 things. I'm going to name 4 tasks that we sort of do all the time as teachers. And could you do me a favour and put them in order of what you consider takes the most time? All right. Okay, so, scheme of work, individual lesson plans, student reports, and marked work. So out of them 4, put them in order of which takes the most time, do you think?
Well, I'd say a scheme of work based on like a full year's lessons and stuff. I'd go for scheme of work, taking the most amount of time. Then I'd probably say marked work. And what was the other 2? Lesson plan
and report writing, so individual student report writing.
All right, okay. I'd probably go a lesson plan and then an individual report on a student.
The report on a student one is quite interesting, because I think that a lot of us as teachers, we usually have a quality team or a data team that would produce them for us. However, what is apparent is that we hold all the information, so we know how that student's performing. So if we have tracking documents that track students' performance over a period of so many units, that sort of thing, it would be handy now if we could take that Excel document and convert that into a bespoke report for a student, which Interactive Tutor actually does. And that really is going to be the next thing that I'm going to be looking at doing when we go into college. But yeah, the reports one is an odd one, but I would scheme of work for a full year takes a lot of work. Again, me, I'm a big one. Marked work is a handful. I find, I would say with you, lesson plans, they don't take that much time, but then they're also a bit like down to the individual creativity, what you expect from your lesson. So some people might have loads going on, whereas others might not be as such. So right, okay. So think about in your daily routine, how much time do you think, could you try to explain how much time you think an application like Interactive Tutor could save you in a day?
In a day, it would basically, if I had a spare hour or something like that, in a day, you could knock up a couple of lesson plans, like easily, for example, and like Ofsted and all that stuff done. Like, if you could have that prepared as many as you could in advance, that would be great. It would save a lot of time. Any other spare time, would be, structuring a lesson, making it fun, activities.
Do you think you have enough? I mean, do you think you have enough time to complete your all of your admin tasks? Let's say, other than teaching, everything else is admin related. Do you think we've got enough time in college to do that?
No, definitely not. No,
definitely not.
We've got to do things like this right now in half terms when we're off. We've still always got to, even though like relax a bit. We've always still got to have our head focused on work still, even though we've got time off. You've got to do it. I do it myself. Like the scheme of works in the summer. I was working on scheme of works in the summer, for example. We don't have time. Scheme
of works are a big. I think they take a lot of time, and I would like to see what if Interactive Tutor could produce a scheme of work. And I think it would only be down to giving it the information, telling it how you want to structure it. But that is definitely something that we need to look at, because it can be very time consuming. And like you say, although we need a scheme of work to help us, to guide our practice and to guide us, with what we're teaching and when we're teaching it, it makes it really, it's less stressful when we do get that sort of phone call to say we're having a visit or some sort of observation, to be able to say, you know what, we've got it already planned, it's done and dusted. So question then, really, now the final one is, if you had access to Interactive Tutor, you had your own account ready to go, is it something you think you could find a use for each day? Is it something you would use?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
all sorts of different things. Yeah, if it can do it, when we have a go of it. Yeah, like organising, lesson plans, scheme of works, like homework assignments based on.
Well, how is this for a thought? I mean, I spoke with someone earlier, and their thought was that if it can reduce our workload down by so much that we can actually focus more on giving students more, if that makes sense, because there's a certain element that we can give them, I don't know, let's each week 5 assignments, but we can't give them any more because we know that we have to mark them as well. But obviously now, if that marking time is cut down by 3/4 of the time, which it would be easily, then we can now start thinking, you know what, we can give the students more work, or we can start focusing a lot more on individual ability. So, looking at where students are struggling and maybe differentiating the tasks. So, obviously you have students that might have issues, or they might just generally struggle, and others that are flying by. And if something like Interactive Tutor can save time on all the other stuff and produce work that's differentiated, I mean, the possibilities are quite endless when you think about it.
Yeah. So you'll always have a student who will really excel, won't you? And then it's hard to balance that in the theory room, like where we got to keep them busy again. So if they're finished the task and they're waiting for the guys who are a little bit slower and take more time, could be beneficial. Like if this platform could sort out like an extra task or something like that.
This platform, Tom, and I know we will definitely be having a look at this, because I do appreciate how we'll be having a look at this when we go back. But if you were in a session and someone finished early and you hadn't got something ready to go, this application could produce that in a matter of seconds. So you just do it on the fly. There you go. There's 10 more questions, and it'll give you the answers so that you don't have to. So it reduces your thinking time. You don't have to go worrying about searching for answers. So the potential is there. So, I mean, that really is all I needed to chat to you about tonight. So I appreciate your time. I will see you back at work on Monday. Like I say, and we'll have a little look at, and we'll go through some more demos, and we'll have a real play and get sort of stuck into it and see where we can save ourselves some time, mate. Okay?
Good stuff, yeah.
Right, you go get yourself a drink of water before you croak. See you later on.
Bye.
Okay, so Dave, did you have a chance to watch that video? That
I did, yes, yeah.
You did. You saw it. Okay, brilliant. So what I want to just I'm not too sort of familiar with how much you know about AI at the moment, or how much you use it, but if you are familiar with ChatGPT, though, you've heard of that, haven't you?
Yeah.
Okay. So ChatGPT relies on you creating prompts so that you ask it to behave in a certain way, and then it gets its information from pretty much all over the internet. All right.
Yeah.
Now, the application that we're looking at, Interactive Tutor, it's called, it has a slightly different spin on it. So rather than you taking its information from the internet, which it can do, you can actually tell it where you want it to get the information from. So you could give it, perhaps for you guys, you could give it all of the T-level qualification, and it will focus on that rather than, so that you're probably spending less time worrying about the prompts you're giving it, because it automatically goes to the place, you know, where the information is. Because ChatGPT does have a habit of making things up as well. If it can't find an answer, it will just make something up. So this was, for me initially, this was a no-brainer. The fact that I could get students to use it as a resource, and I knew that everything that they would find on there was relevant and accurate. Okay. Now, what I wanted to do, I'm going to ask you a few questions. Now, from the point of view of a teacher and educator, if you had an application like Interactive Tutor to help you in your daily teaching, what sort of things would you want it to do for you?
It would definitely be good on the marking situation. Say we give a certain scenario and they're writing an assignment for us, and we can give marks towards that. That takes up a lot of our time, as well as the feedback as well for them. So that would help me. I seen the last part in your video about that feedback. That is a really good tool for us, and also asking questions on the session we've just covered. Generating questions for that would be a good idea.
Yeah, that will definitely, well, it'll do all of those, and like I say, it's for me personally, I'm looking forward to showing people in action, because it will save a lot of time. Right, so you've kind of briefed over it a little bit. I mean, I suppose I'm just asking you to reiterate this a little bit with thoughts to marking and feedback specifically. What, you know, how much of a game changer is that for you lot?
Massively. It's going to save us absolute hours. We have, I think, 80 T-level students, something like that. Right. And to mark them weekly, it just takes up so much time.
Hours and hours.
That would really save a lot of time for us.
Excellent. Okay, what I'm going to do, if you don't mind, I'm going to read 4 activities that you do as a teacher. I want you to, could you put them in a sort of order as to which you believe takes the most time? All right.
Right, Nave, sorry about that. I've been missing all day, and they come just as a sick call.
Yeah, it was gonna happen, wasn't it? So right, I'm gonna give you 4 activities, Dave. Can you put them in order of what you think takes the most time? All right.
Yeah.
Yearly scheme of work, individual lesson plans, student reports, and marked work and feedback.
So marked work and feedback, definitely the most work.
Yep.
Scheme of work, reports, lesson plan.
Lesson plan. Although that's different to what some other people have said, I would agree. That's probably the same as what I would say. Brilliant. Okay. So considering what you do in a jam-packed day, and you're a team leader, so you've got an awful lot to do. Having an application like Interactive Tutor that could do your planning, your marked work, your reports, how much time do you think you could save in a day, in your average day?
In a day?
Yeah.
Oh, at least 2 hours. 2
at
hours.
Least...
If not an extra hour on a night when I come home sometimes. So
do you do a bit of work at home?
I do work at home as well, yeah. Yeah, right. So it'll save me loads of time, especially, like you say, taking on the team lead and whatnot. I concentrate on that and the lessons.
Yeah. And if I mean, really the last question for me is, if I can get you access to this and get you your own login, your own details for Interactive Tutor, is it, and it can do what it needs to, or what I'm saying it can do, is this something that perhaps you will use on a daily basis, do you think?
Absolutely will, yeah. Yeah, without a doubt.
Without a doubt, brilliant. Okay, Dave, that is all I need, and obviously I know you've got to go and tend to this guy up there. So there we go. You've had a chance to see and listen to my colleagues, and I hope you found that useful and informative. So I ran a poll as well on LinkedIn, which I'll put that on the screen so you can have a look at the results. And I also put a video together showing how I've used Interactive Tutor, and I'll have a number of feedback comments that I can pop on screen so you can see them again. So again, thank you for taking the time to watch this, and I really do hope you found this useful.